the spiritual forces with which all of us are blessed. And it was in this field that I came upon a clue which has enabled me to help millions of people to find their earthly destinies. I want to describe my discovery in the simplest terms possible, because it will reveal to you why it is true that whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve, regardless of how many times you may have failed in the past or how lofty your aims and hopes may be. I caught my first fleeting glimpse of the profound law which provides the means by which we may choose our own purpose in life and attain it while I was being coached by Andrew Carnegie during the organization of the Science of Success philosophy. I had just finished telling Mr. Carnegie that I feared he had chosen the wrong person to give the world the first practical philosophy of personal success because of my youth, my lack of education, and my lack of finances. Well, at this point, Mr. Carnegie delivered a lecture that I shall never forget because it changed my entire life and paved the way for my helping to change the lives of millions of people, some of them not yet born. Let me call your attention to a great power which is under your control, said Mr. Carnegie, a power which is greater than poverty, greater than the lack of education, greater than all of your fears and superstitions combined. It is the power to take possession of your own mind and direct it to whatever ends you may desire. This profound power, Mr. Carnegie continued, is the gift of the Creator, and it must have been considered the greatest of all of his gifts to man, because it is the only thing over which man has the complete and unchallengeable right of control and direction. When you speak of your poverty and lack of education, Mr. Carnegie explained, you are simply directing your mind power to attract these undesirable circumstances, because it is true that whatever your mind feeds upon, your mind attracts to you. Now you see why it is important that you recognize that all success begins with definiteness of purpose, with a clear picture in your mind of precisely what you want from life. Then Mr. Carnegie continued his speech with a description of a great universal truth which made such an impact upon my mind that I began then and there to give myself a new outlook on life and set up for myself a goal so far above my previous achievements that it shocked my friends and relatives when they heard about it. Everyone, said Mr. Carnegie, comes to the earth plane blessed with the privilege of controlling his mind power and directing it to whatever ends he may choose. But, he continued, everyone brings over with him at birth the equivalent of two sealed envelopes, one of which is clearly labeled the riches you may enjoy if you take possession of your own mind and direct it to ends of your own choice, and the other is labeled the penalties you must pay if you neglect to take possession of your mind and direct it. And now let me reveal to you, said Mr. Carnegie, the contents of those two sealed envelopes. In the one labeled riches is this list of blessings. 1, sound health. 2, peace of mind. 3, a labor of love of your own choice. 4, freedom from fear and worry. 5, a positive mental attitude. 6, material riches of your own choice and quantity. In the sealed envelope labeled penalties, Mr. Carnegie continued, is this list of the prices one must pay for neglecting to take possession of his own mind. 1, ill health. 2, fear and worry. 3, indecision and doubt. 4, frustration and discouragement throughout life. 5, poverty and want. 6, and a whole flock of evils consisting of envy, greed, jealousy, anger, hatred, and superstition. Now, my mission in life is to help you and everyone who needs my help to open up and use the contents of the sealed envelope labeled riches. And the starting point from which you must take off if you wish to write your own ticket from here on out for the remainder of your life, I will describe for you in these simple instructions. 1, procure a neat pocket-sized a notebook, or something on the order of this one here, loose leaf affair. And on page 1, write down a clear description of your major desire in life, the one circumstance or position or thing which you will be willing to accept as your idea of success. And remember before you begin writing that your only limitations are those which you set up in your own mind or permit others to set up for you. And 2, on page 2 of your notebook, write down a clear statement of precisely what you intend to give in return for that which you desire from life. And then start in right where you stand now to begin giving. And 3, memorize both of your statements, what you desire and what you intend to give in return for it. And repeat them at least a dozen times daily. And always end your statements with this expression of gratitude for the blessings with which you were gifted at birth. I ask not, O divine providence, for more riches, but more wisdom with which to accept and use wisely the riches I received at birth in the form of the power to control and direct my mind to whatever ends I desire. If you are not too successful or self-satisfied to accept and express this profound prayer, if you accept it and express it in the same spirit of humble sincerity in which I pass it on to you, a new and a better world will reveal itself to you. A world in which you will see reflected the circumstances and the things which you yourself have created. And now let me close this, our first visit, with my favorite expression of gratitude. O divine providence, I ask not for more riches, but more wisdom with which to make wiser use of the riches you gave me at birth, consisting in the power to control and direct my own mind to whatever ends I desire.
My name is W. Clement Stone. As General Manager of the Napoleon Hill Associates, it is my privilege to introduce you to Napoleon Hill.
How do you do? I'm very happy to have this personal visit with you. Won't you be seated, please? And now, may I request that you forget all your problems and just relax while I bring you the master key with which you may unlock the door to any opportunity that your mind can conceive. The master key consists of 17 principles, the first of which is definiteness of purpose. Right here at the beginning of our visit, I'm going to make you a promise. If you will decide definitely what you want most during your entire lifetime and write it down on paper so that I can read it, I will give you the master key with which you may open the door to the attainment of your desires, whatever they may be. The exact moment when I will deliver this master key to you will depend entirely upon it. This is the first of 13 messages that I will deliver to you. Now, in each message, I will describe the master key in terms that you will understand, if you are ready to understand. And now I shall give you the first cue as to the nature of the great master key which has been responsible for all the great successes in every calling, in every part of the world. Please listen carefully to what I have to say, because you may discover the secret of the master key in this first visit. You may get your first cue as to the nature of the great master key when I tell you that psychologists have discovered a natural law which is the very foundation of all personal successes. And I can describe it to you in one short sentence so you can understand it. Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, achieve. Isn't that a profound statement? You will notice that it says nothing about the need for education, but simply that whatever your mind can conceive and believe, your mind can achieve. Now, if you want evidence that the mind can achieve whatever the mind can conceive without the benefit of formal education, you only have to remember that Thomas A. Edison conceived the idea of becoming an inventor and lived to become the world's greatest scientist in the field of invention. with only 3 months of common school education. When I first heard Andrew Carnegie describe this natural law, which makes it possible for you and I and everyone else to write his own price tag in life and attain it, I became so enthused over it that I began to search for the power back of it, and my curiosity to the discovery of the master key, which I shall reveal to you if you are ready to receive it. My search led me to the study of the spiritual forces with which all of us are blessed, and it was in this field that I came upon a clue which has enabled me to help millions of people to find their earthly destinies. I want to describe my discovery in the simplest terms possible, because it will reveal to you why it is true that whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve, regardless of how many times you may have failed in the past or how lofty your aims and hopes may be. I caught my first fleeting glimpse of the profound law which provides the means by which we may choose our own purpose in life and attain it, while I was being coached by Andrew Carnegie during the organization of the Science of Success philosophy. I had just finished telling Mr. Carnegie that I feared he had chosen the wrong person to give the world the first practical philosophy of personal success because of my youth, my lack of education, and my lack of finances. Well, at this point, Mr. Carnegie delivered a lecture that I shall never forget, because it changed my entire life and paved the way for my helping to change the lives of millions of people, some of them not yet born. Let me call your attention to a great power which is under your control, said Mr. Carnegie, a power which is greater than poverty, greater than the lack of education, greater than all of your fears and superstitions combined. It is the power to take possession of your own mind and direct it to whatever ends you may desire. This profound power, Mr. Carnegie continued, is the gift of the Creator, and it must have been considered the greatest of all of his gifts to man, because it is the only thing over which man has the complete and unchallengeable right of control and direction. When you speak of your poverty and lack of education, Mr. Carnegie explained, you are simply directing your mind power to attract these undesirable circumstances, because it is true that whatever your mind feeds upon, your mind attracts to you. Now you see why it is important that you recognize that all success begins with definiteness of purpose, with a clear picture in your mind of precisely what you want from life. Then Mr. Carnegie continued his speech with a description of a great universal truth which made such an impact upon my mind that I began then and there to give myself a new outlook on life and set up for myself a goal so far above my previous achievements that it shocked my friends and relatives when they heard about it. Everyone, said Mr. Carnegie, comes to the earth plane blessed with the privilege of controlling his mind power and directing it to whatever ends he may choose. But, he continued, everyone brings over with him at birth the equivalent of 2 sealed envelopes, one of which is clearly labeled, the riches you may enjoy if you take possession of your own mind and direct it to ends of your own choice. And the other is labeled, the penalties you must pay if you neglect to take possession of your mind and direct it. And now let me reveal to you, said Mr. Carnegie, the contents of those 2 sealed envelopes. In the one labeled riches is this list of blessings. 1, sound health. 2, peace of mind. 3, a labor of love of your own choice. 4, freedom from fear and worry. 5, a positive mental attitude. 6, material riches of your own choice and quantity. In the sealed envelope labeled penalties, Mr. Carnegie continued, is this list of the prices one must pay for neglecting to take possession of his own mind. 1, ill health. 2, fear and worry. 3, indecision and doubt. 4, frustration and discouragement throughout life. 5, poverty and want. 6, and a whole flock of evils consisting of envy, greed, jealousy, anger, hatred, and superstition. Now, my mission in life is to help you and everyone who needs my help to open up and use the contents of the sealed envelope labeled riches. And the starting point from which you must take off if you wish to write your own ticket from here on out for the remainder of your life, I will describe for you in these simple instructions. 1, procure a neat pocket-sized notebook, or something on the order of this one here, loose leaf affair. And on page 1, write down a clear description of your major desire in life, the one circumstance or position or thing which you will be willing to accept as your idea of success. And remember before you begin writing that your only limitations are those which you set up in your own mind or permit others to set up for you. And 2, on page 2 of your notebook, write down a clear statement of precisely what you intend to give in return for that which you desire from life. And then start in right where you stand now to begin giving. And 3, both of your statements, what you desire and what you intend to give in return for it. And repeat them at least a dozen times daily. And always end your statements with this expression of gratitude for the blessings with which you were gifted at birth. I ask not, O divine providence, for more riches, but more wisdom with which to accept and use wisely the riches I received at birth in the form of the power to control and direct my mind to whatever ends I desire. If you are not too successful or self-satisfied to accept and express this profound prayer, if you accept it and express it in the same spirit of humble sincerity in which I pass it on to you, a new and a better world will reveal itself to you. A world in which you will see reflected the circumstances and the things which you yourself have created. In my next visit, I will give you a description of the second principle of success, through the application of which you may make use of the education and experience of other people and get the necessary help you may need in attaining your definite major purpose in life. And now let me close this, our first visit, with my favorite expression of gratitude. O divine providence, I ask not for more riches, but more wisdom with which to make wiser use of the riches you gave me at birth, consisting in the power to control and direct my own mind to whatever ends I desire. Well, this, our third visit, brings us to the success principle which has marked the turning point of every person who has promoted himself or herself from the lower brackets of success to the higher planes of achievement, where one acquires everything he desires. This principle is called the habit of going the extra mile, which means the habit of rendering more service and better service than one is expected to render, and doing it in a positive mental attitude. I'm going to tell you all I know about this magic principle of self-advancement, because it is the one rule you must follow if you expect to write your own price tag and to be sure of getting it. Let me describe this success principle for you in a brief formula which you can easily remember. I call it the QQMA formula, which means the quality of service you render plus the quantity of service you render plus the mental attitude in which you render service determines the space you occupy in your chosen calling and the compensation you get from your services. If you will examine carefully the people whom you know to be unusually successful, you will discover that they follow the QQMA formula, although they may do so unconsciously. Now, I wish to give you a big advantage over those who follow this formula unconsciously. I wish to show you how to make use of it deliberately with purpose of forethought, so you may make the principle pay off in a big way and do it quickly. Now I shall tell you some of the benefits you will enjoy by following the habit of going the extra mile. 1, this habit will bring you to the favorable attention of those who can and will provide you with opportunities to promote yourself into a better circumstance. 2, it will place back of you that great natural law of increasing returns through which the service you render will bring back greater than average compensations. And 3, following this habit will make you indispensable in your chosen occupation or calling. Therefore, it will place you in a position to write your own ticket. And 4, This habit will help you to excel in your line of work, because each time you render service, you endeavor to do a better job than you did previously. And 5, if you work for a salary or wages, this habit will give you preference when work is slack and others are laid off. And 6, it will help you to benefit by the law of contrast, because the others around you will not be going the first mile, let alone the second mile. And 7, following this habit of doing your very best in all of your efforts and doing it in a pleasing mental attitude will improve your personality and make you liked by others. And 8, it will also help you to develop a keen, alert imagination, because you will be continuously seeking new and better ways of rendering useful service. 9, it will inspire you to move on your own personal initiative instead of waiting to be told what to do, a habit which is the first step in leadership in all callings. The habit of going the extra mile definitely develops greater self-reliance and gives one more courage to move ahead without the fear of criticism from others. And here is one thing it does, which, if it benefited you in no other way, would justify you in adopting it. It helps you to master the destructive habit of procrastination, the one habit which heads the list of causes of failure. 12, going the extra mile influences other people to respect your integrity and inspires them to go out of their way to cooperate with you in a friendly spirit. And 13, the habit helps you to develop definiteness of purpose, which is the starting point of all personal success. And it stops you from drifting through life without knowing what you want or where you are going. And number 14, and here is the grand payoff which this habit gives you. It provides you with the one and only excuse for asking for a promotion to a better station in life or a higher pay. Obviously, if you are doing no more than you are being paid for, then you are receiving pay for all to which you are entitled. And you have not a single excuse for asking for more pay or a better position. You understand this point and appreciate its significance, do you not? 15, last but not least, the habit of going the extra mile conditions your mind to maintain a mastermind alliance with others. Ever so often I hear people complain about their not receiving favorable breaks in their relations with others. I never hear this sort of complaint from one of my students of the science of success, nor from anyone who has ever read any book that I have written, because all of my students have learned the secret of how to create their own favorable breaks. They do it by following the habit of going the extra mile. I can tell you frankly, I have never received a major favorable break during my entire life that did not come from having applied the principle of going the extra mile. Sometimes I hear people complain also that their positions are such that they are not permitted to go the extra mile. And my counsel to these people is always the same. Change positions and market your services where it pays to go the extra mile. I am sincere in giving this advice because I know that no one can do better than earn a mere living unless and until he begins going the extra mile. During my business career, I suppose I have employed at one time or another at least a score of private secretaries, all of whom followed the habit of going the extra mile. But I have never been able to keep but one of those secretaries for more than a year because invariably they promoted themselves into better paying jobs elsewhere, and they did so with my full blessings. The one exception is my present chief secretary, who has been with me for over 10 years. I married her to make sure I wouldn't lose her. The reason I know definitely that the habit of going the extra mile is a sound procedure is the fact that I have checked this principle, as I did all of the other 16 success principles, to make sure they were in harmony with natural laws. I can give you a fine example of how nature forces man to go the extra mile in order that he may produce the food with which to exist. The farmer, for example, must follow the habit of clearing the ground, fencing it, plowing it, and planting the seed at the right season of the year, all of which he must do in advance without compensation of any kind. If he does his part of the work properly, he then hands the job over to nature, sits down and waits for her to do her part, and within a brief period, nature germinates the seed the farmer plants, matures it, and yields back to him the seed he planted, plus perhaps an increase of 100 times that amount, to compensate him for having gone the extra mile. Thus we see that the law of increasing returns comes to the aid of the man who goes the extra mile. And this principle applies the same in rendering service in a job as it does in the fields of a farmer. If the farmer did not follow the habit of going the extra mile, the human race would starve to death in one season. And I am sure you will agree that any time we can copy Mother Nature's habits, we will not go wrong in doing so. You now have a possession of the third principle of personal achievement, which brings you 3 steps nearer the secret by which you may take possession of the master key to success. In order that you may test the magic power of this third principle, I'm going to offer you a suggestion which may bring you such overwhelming success that you will not need to attend further visits with me. My suggestion is this. First, start tomorrow in whatever occupation you are engaged to render some form of useful service to someone near you which you are not expected to render and for which you neither expect nor ask for compensation. And 2, render this service in a pleasing mental attitude which will show clearly that you enjoy doing it. And 3, follow this practice 7 days in succession, and then notice what a changed atmosphere you will enjoy in your association with those nearest you. In carrying out these instructions, do not make known your plan to anyone, but go ahead and do it in the most natural way possible. And by the end of the 7th day, you will find yourself so much happier and so much better liked by those around you that you will never desire to give up the habit. Then you will be within easy reach of the supreme secret of success, which comes through the master key to success. In my 4th visit with you, I will give you a very definite clue as to the means by which you may appropriate and use the great master key. And in this same clue, I will introduce you to the source of a form of power which does not recognize the word impossible and helps you to transmute all failures and defeats and all adversities into assets of great benefit to you. And now, until our next visit, may I remind you that if you believe it, you can do it. We come now to the 4th visit, where I shall introduce you to your greatest asset, and with this introduction, the master key to success will be within your easy reach. I say this is your greatest asset because it is the 4th of the 17 success principles with which you may tap and draw upon the supreme power which created you and runs this entire universe. The name of this principle is applied faith, and I want you to remember it is not something I am bringing to you, but it is something you already possess, although you may not have made use of it in the past. And now let me tell you what applied faith is and what you can do with it. Applied faith is the mental attitude wherein you may clear your mind of all fears and doubts and direct it to the attainment of whatever you desire in life. In our first visit, I told you that you and I and every person were blessed with the privilege of complete control over but one thing, and that is the exclusive right to take possession of our own minds and direct them to the attainment of whatever we desire in life. Applied faith is a mental attitude we must cultivate and maintain before we can take complete possession of our minds. It is the means by which we may break the seal of that envelope I mentioned in our first visit and take full possession of the 6 forms of riches we get in return for taking possession of our minds and using them. Those 6 riches were, as you may remember, sound health, peace of mind, a labor of love of your own choice, freedom from fear and worry, a positive mental attitude, and material riches of your own choice and quantity. We are now, this very moment, standing in front of the gateway which can be opened only with the great master key to success. And I'm giving you the closest clue I have yet mentioned as to how you may take possession of this key. In order that you may condition your mind to embrace and use applied faith, you must understand that there are 2 ways in which you can use faith. You can put it into reverse gear and use it in a negative way by allowing your mind to dwell upon the circumstances and the things you do not want, such as poverty, ill health, failure, defeat, And this is precisely what the majority of people do, which explains why the majority of people go through life in misery and want. Or you can take possession of your mind and direct it to think of the 6 riches which came over with you in that sealed envelope. And you will attract these riches to bless and serve you all through your life. Isn't it a strange fact that most people make a negative application of their great power of faith by thinking about and believing in poverty, ill health, fear, failure, and defeat, when it would be so easy for them just to change their thinking over to the circumstances and things they desire? Now let me give you a description of the one thing which represents the main difference between a successful person and a failure. Please listen carefully and think for yourself as I speak, because failure to recognize the truth I am about to give you is the starting point of most failures. Successful people in all occupations, all professions, and all callings have one trait which distinguishes them from the failures. It is their capacity for belief. The failures see the hole in the donut, but do not see the donut around the hole. The successes see the hole also, but they see the donut around the hole. Thomas A. Edison believed that he could perfect an incandescent electric lamp, and despite the fact that he failed over 10,000 times before he was crowned with success, he made his belief uncover the secret for which he was searching. Give one guess as to how many times the average person must fail before he quits. Fails because of the lack of capacity for belief. How many times can you meet with defeat before you give up the ghost and quit? Henry Ford believed he could build a self-propelled vehicle which would take the place of the horse and buggy. And despite the ridicule of relatives and neighbors and the lack of finances, he transmuted his belief into an industrial empire which changed the entire American way of life. Mind you, Ford did this with very little education and no operating capital to begin with. Right here, let me ask you a question which may well change your entire life. You perhaps have an idea or a plan which would be useful to other people, but you have done nothing about it because you lack the self-confidence to give you a start. In other words, you are now where Henry Ford was before he built the first model of his world-famous automobile. Mr. Ford broke through that wall of fear which may now be holding you back and put his idea into operation by making use of the mastermind principle I mentioned in our second visit, through an alliance with his wife. Now, the question I wish to ask you is this: why don't you form a mastermind alliance with someone and begin putting your ideas to work for you? Belief is truly a magic word, because it is the beginning of all successes. It is the very foundation of civilization. It is the one quality you must develop before you can make use of the great master key to success. To be successful, you must become a person with a great capacity for belief. And the place to start believing is with yourself. You should begin by recognizing that you were born with the privilege of complete control over your own mind. You should also recognize that by the application of the master key to success, which I am passing on to you through these visits, you can take full possession of your mind and make it yield you whatever you demand in life. Observe, I use the word demand, not beg. The Creator never intended for you to beg for anything. If He had, He would not have blessed you with full control over your own mind. If your life is not what you want it to be, you can change it. As a matter of fact, you can do anything within reason that you desire to do if you embrace the principle of applied faith and keep it directed to the attainment of the things you want and off the things you do not want. I should know what I'm talking about because I was handicapped at birth by the 4 horsemen which keep most people in bondage all the days of their lives: poverty, fear, illiteracy, and superstition. I have discovered the master key which gives one deliverance from all the evils one does not want and opens wide the gateway to the riches which the Creator intended every person to enjoy on this earth. Applied faith is the only means by which the master key can be appropriated and used. Therefore, I give you these instructions through which you may create a mental attitude which is favorable for the expression of faith. 1, know what you want and believe that you can and will get it. 2, give expressions of gratitude many times daily for having received that which you want, even before you actually get physical possession of it. Possession starts first in the mind. Please remember this. 3rd, keep your mind open for hunches from within. And when you are inspired to action, do not wait, but move on your own personal initiative at once. Remember, there can be no application of applied faith without action. 4th, when overtaken by defeat, as you may be many times, remember that man's faith is tested many times before he is crowned with final victory. And accept your defeat as nothing more than a challenge to keep on trying. And 5, a burning desire for the things or circumstances you want is the starting point of all applied faith. Be definite, believe, and act. And keep on acting if at first you meet with defeat. 6, when doubt creeps into your mind, remember that whatsoever a man believeth, that shall he also reap. Remember, faith is not something you get. Faith is something you already have. But you may be using it in reverse gear by believing in the circumstances and things you do not want, the things you fear. Remember also that faith is guidance only. It is not a power which will bring you what you want, but a power that can guide you to go after what you want and get it. Remember, too, that your faith is limited only by your own capacity to believe. You can do whatever you make up your mind to do. I believed I could give the world a practical philosophy of success which would free men and women from their fears and limitations. I stood firmly back of that belief through 20-odd years of effort and saw my belief give freedom to millions of people. Do the thing, said Emerson, and you shall have the power. May I paraphrase this great truth by saying, believe and you shall receive. And now, until our next visit, will you please remember that your life is exactly what you make it by your own mental attitude. I'm happy to be with you for our 5th visit, and our subject is a pleasing personality. Your personality determines whether people are attracted to you or shy away from you. It is the show window in which you display your character to the world, and it is the one thing which distinguishes you from all other human beings. It is your trademark by which people recognize you, and it is the thing which determines your success or failure in selling yourself through life. Therefore, you should see your personality just as others see it, so you may improve it where it needs improvement. Your personality consists of more than 30 different factors, traits, and characteristics. Because of the limit of time I can devote to this visit with you, I can mention only the more important of your traits of personality. But before I begin to describe these traits, I want you to know that every trait which goes into your personality is under your control, and you can improve it so it will be whatever you want it to be. Let us start with the most important trait of your personality, your mental attitude. This is the trait with which you attract people to you and cause them to like you, or repel them and cause them to dislike you. Your mental attitude must be positive if you attract people to you. How do other people know whether your mental attitude is positive or negative, you may ask? Well, the answer is easy. First of all, other people tune in and pick up your mental attitude by telepathy without your saying a word or making a move. But there are other ways they can tell whether your mental attitude is negative or positive. You disclose this information by the tone of your voice, whether it is pleasant or harsh, by the expression on your face, whether it is soft and pleasing or harsh and scowling, by the courtesy and consideration you show other people, or the lack of these. So you see, there is no escape from revealing to others the exact nature of your personality. The next most important trait of your personality consists of your flexibility of your mental attitude or your lack of it. If you have flexibility, you adjust yourself to all the circumstances in your relations with others without losing your composure or allowing yourself to become irritable or angry. Just remember, if you have flexibility of your mental attitude, it will be impossible for anyone to make you angry or to irritate you without your consent or cooperation. Now, this is worth knowing, isn't it? You cannot control the actions of other people which might justify you in becoming irritated by them, but you can control your reaction to all such circumstances by exercising your trait of flexibility. And you will observe that all people in the higher brackets of success have this flexibility, and they do control their reaction to the influences of other people. The third most important trait of a pleasing personality is the ability to control and direct your emotion of enthusiasm. Enthusiasm is one of the means by which you can give forcefulness to your words, but you must be able to turn it on and off at will as definitely as you can turn on and off water at the spigot. Uncontrolled enthusiasm often makes people boresome. It also may open wide the window to one's mind through which other people may enter and influence one in ways he does not wish to be influenced. The fourth most important trait of a pleasing personality is a sincerity of purpose. The person who is not sincere in all relationships with others is soon detected and rejected, because no one is attracted to the person who thus endeavors to deceive others. Sincerity is one quality of character which cannot be successfully faked, not even by the most astute rascal or the most efficient actor, because insincerity evermore carries with it some warning sign which other people recognize. You have only to go back into your own experience with insincere people to prove the truth of what I have stated. There are 26 other important traits which give one a pleasing personality, but I do not have time to give them to you in this visit. Now let us turn our attention to some of the common habits which destroy a pleasing personality. Please check yourself as I describe these negative habits, and you may make discoveries about yourself sufficient to enable you to rebuild your entire personality so it will become a master salesman in your behalf. One of the most destructive habits which make one's personality objectionable is that of breaking in and running away with the conversation when others are speaking. And 2, sarcasm, expressed by insinuations and wisecracks which are not so wise, is near the head of the list of habits which give one a negative personality. And 3rd, vanity, expressed by either words or actions, is sure to make one unpopular. And 4, indifference in listening while others are speaking is sure to be noticed and resented. It is more profitable to be a good listener than it is to be a good talker, because one is always apt to learn something while listening to others, but never learns anything from hearing himself talk. 5, the attempt to flatter where flattery is obviously not deserved will bring quick resentment from others. Also, it will put them on notice, if they are wise, that the flatterer wants something he perhaps should not get. And 6, the habit of finding fault with the world at large and the people in general is never a popular habit, and it is no part of a pleasing personality. It is far better to direct conversation to the circumstances and things which are right than to complain of those which one believes to be wrong. And 7, one of the very worst habits which destroy a pleasing personality is that of openly and directly challenging those with whom one may not agree, where there is no obvious reason for doing so, except the desire to be on the opposite side. And 8, the habit of volunteering unsolicited advice to others who have not requested it can make one an intolerable bore. Free advice usually is considered to be worth just what it costs, which is nothing but the patience with which to listen to it. And 9, The habit of speaking of one's physical ailments, worries, and personal problems may be tolerated by others, but this habit will never make one welcome or pleasing. If you wish to make yourself welcome in your relations with others, manage to talk about things which interest and concern those to whom you are speaking. You will never be boresome to the person to whom you are speaking of himself and the things which interest him, a truth which all master salesmen understand and respect. And 10, the habit of endeavoring to convey an impression of superiority through the use of words and topics unfamiliar to others is a surefire destroyer of popularity. If you wish to sell yourself to others successfully, you must negotiate with them on their own level through terms which they understand. And 11, envy of those who are successful is a trait which destroys a pleasing personality. The truly great men and women have all been known to be generous, sympathetic, and joyous in connection with the good fortunes of others. And 12, slovenliness in body, posture, and in clothing never attracts but always repels others. Clothes make not the man, as has been said, but they surely give him a mighty good start if they are appropriate and properly worn. Carelessness in body carriage and posture is immediately traceable to a negative mental attitude. If you are free from these 12 common habits which make one unpopular, you probably have a very pleasing personality. There are 5 other negative habits which make one unpopular, which I have not had the time to mention. Remember this, please. If you are not liked by other people, you may be sure there is a reason which you can detect and correct. It is unnatural for one person to dislike another without a cause. Before you can make full use of the master key to success, you will need to make your personality pleasing. This will require courage on your part and honesty with yourself. A pleasing personality stands near the head of the list of assets which make one truly rich. I was impressed with this truth many years ago when I heard Andrew Carnegie say that he paid his right-hand mastermind ally, Charles M. Schwab, $75,000 a year for the services he rendered directly. But he often gave Mr. Schwab a bonus at the end of the year of $1 million for the influence he exerted on his associate workers because of his pleasing personality. You see, therefore, Andrew Carnegie, who has been said to have been the greatest judge of men this nation has ever known, placed a value on a pleasing personality of more than 10 times as much as he valued the personal services of his right-hand man. Perhaps this will give you a clue that may help you up the market value of your personality. And now, until we meet again, may I wish you health, wealth, and peace of mind. This visit brings us to the 6th principle of success, without which the 5 principles I have given you previously would be useless. It is the principle of self-discipline. Self-discipline, as I am presenting it to you here, has reference not only to your mastery of negative habits, which stand in the way of your success, but more particularly to your development and enforcement of the positive habits you will need in order to avail yourself of the 6 assets you brought over with you in that sealed envelope I mentioned in our first visit. Now let me give you a list of the more important things over which you will have to exercise self-discipline before you can embrace and use the great master key to riches. 1, you will have to gain mastery over your tongue by acquiring the habit of thinking first and then speaking after you are sure that what you say will benefit you and not injure others. A loose tongue often is one's greatest liability. 2, you will have to exercise self-discipline in mastering the common tendency to strike back at those at whom you have a cause, real or imaginary, for a grievance. You must remember that everything you do to or for another, you do to or for yourself, because your every thought and every act which benefits or injures another person comes back to you in kind, greatly multiplied. So, if you feel that you must slander another person, do not speak it, but write it. Write it in the sands near the water's edge, then move away from it until the tides have flown. 3, You will have to exercise self-discipline over all of your emotions, particularly your emotions of love, hate, fear, and sex. These are the big four of your emotions, and they can make you or break you according to the extent of discipline you exercise over them. 4, your mental attitude needs discipline and control at all times. Lacking this discipline, it can, and it often does, drive away friends, destroy opportunities to get ahead, brings on physical and mental illness, develops stomach ulcers, and makes peace of mind impossible. 5, I have reserved the emotion of sex for special mention, because failure to exercise self-discipline over this emotion probably heads the list of all the causes of personal failure. The emotion of sex is the most powerful of all emotions, and it is nature's great creative instrument with which all species of living things are perpetuated. The proper means of self-discipline of the emotion of sex is transmutation, the control and direction of this great emotional feeling toward the attainment of worthy purposes, such as the fulfillment of one's major purpose in life. The great leaders, artists, orators, industrialists, and professional people have learned the art of sex transmutation through the proper system of self-discipline. Because of the delicacy of the subject of sex emotion, I am limited as to the information I can give you about it on this visit. But I have covered the subject much more in detail in some of my books. And 6, your stomach also needs discipline through the proper habits of dieting and fasting, because information on dieting and fasting should come from your own doctor. I will not go into details concerning them, except to call your attention to the need for knowledge on this subject. Personally, I attribute my sound physical health mainly to the habits of dieting and fasting, which I have developed through the years. And 7, you will need to exercise self-discipline in relation to religion and politics, because our country, which is the most acceptable form of society civilization has yet produced, is made up of people of varying beliefs in connection with both of these subjects. To be happy and prosperous in our country, we must learn to live and to let live, to give others the privileges we ask and demand for ourselves. And this often calls for strict discipline over self. 8, but I have reserved until the last my reference to the most important circumstances over which you must exercise the strictest of self-discipline if you are to embrace and use the great master key to riches. I have reference to your profound privilege of taking possession of your own mind and directing it to whatever ends you may desire. You cannot take possession of your own mind or direct it to definite ends without a practical system. I have devoted the better portion of my past life to the revelation and presentation of such a system. And I know that this system works because it has been successfully used by many millions of people throughout the world. The system is not only practical and workable, but it is so simple that anyone who is ready for it may master it and use it successfully. Its use does not call for a genius nor a great amount of formal education. It calls only for a will to take possession of one's own mind and a definite purpose to which the mind is to be directed. Self-discipline by Thomas A. Edison made him the world's greatest inventor, who revealed to mankind during the first half of the 20th century more of nature's secrets than had been uncovered during the entire previous history of civilization. Self-discipline carried Wilbur and Orville Wright through a multitude of failures and enabled them finally to give the world its first practical airplane, an achievement which has made the world smaller and changed the entire trend of civilization. Self-discipline helped Helen Keller to triumph over deafness, blindness, and dumbness, a combination of afflictions such as most people never experience. Self-discipline helped me to carry on through years of heart-aching discouragement and defeat and give the world the first practical philosophy of success based on the know-how gained by hundreds of men and women who spent a lifetime by the trial and error method in discovery of the principles which lead to personal success. Self-discipline is among the top-ranking features of all the great religions, including, of course, the Christian faith. And there are some people who believe that our major purpose on earth is that of developing wisdom through struggle and self-discipline. One thing is certain: no one ever becomes very wise without the aid of self-discipline, and no one ever finds peace of mind and happiness without the strict exercise of self-discipline. Self-discipline is the only means of transmuting sorrow into faith. It is the only means by which we may transmute hatred of others into the milder emotion of sympathy for them. It is the only means by which we may reveal and profit by the seed of an equivalent benefit which comes with every adversity and every defeat. It is the only means by which we may shut out of our minds the deadly effects of past experiences of suffering and unpleasantness. And it is the means by which we may discover that other self we carry around with us, that self which has great capacity for belief and does not become influenced by failure and defeat. Self-discipline can give us freedom from the fear of death, the most difficult to master of all of our fears. It can free us from the disease of hypochondria, the fear of imaginary illness with which so many people suffer and sometimes die. Self-discipline is the means by which we may think our own thoughts, live our own lives as we wish to live them, and remain forever free from the evils of fears and limitations which we have inherited from the dark ages before the dawn of civilization. The Creator never gives one an asset or benefit without passing along with it the means by which it may be embraced and used. Self-discipline, therefore, is the means by which the Creator provided us with a method of embracing and using the only thing over which we have unchallengeable control, the power of our own thoughts. And now, until our next visit, may I remind you that the habit of taking the line of least resistance makes all rivers and some men crooked.